Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Jonasz Lewiński. Moldova is approaching the historical crossroads between European integration and Russian influence, with both Maia Sandu's administration and EU leadership pushing for the former while trying to avert the latter. Yet with risk of Russian election meddling this September, as well as constant looming threat of military action, Chișinău faces a difficult period of navigating bureaucratic hurdles and political maneuvering, especially since Ukraine, its running mate in the enlargement process, struggles with challenges of its own. So can Moldova make it to the finish line against the odds? Joining us now is Oana Popescu, director at the GlobalFocus Center. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So first of all, let's take a glance at the overall situation there. Do you think that Moldova is going to be successful in its negotiations with the EU? And does it really have the time for all the niceties? Because we do know that there are many challenges that need to be addressed right here and right now, including a possible threat from Russia.
I mean, there haven't been many niceties until now. I think when it comes to Moldova, we've definitely seen a very pro-European government, pro-democratic government, quite a unique site in the region, especially outside of EU borders, which has embarked very energetically on this one strategic goal, which is EU accession, and they've been working hard to implement the reforms. And again, they have the perfect constellation to do that, with President Maia Sandu also being very supportive of the pro-European agenda. They held a referendum that was successful. So they also enjoy, and they have managed to garner the support of a majority of the population. However, the challenges, the two main challenges, come on the one hand from Russia, as you well pointed out. Russia has generated a very difficult security context for Moldova regionally with the war in Ukraine. It is trying to influence the elections. It has fiercely interfered in elections already last year, but which Moldova managed to successfully push back. But they are stepping up those misinformation interference, vote buying efforts this year when Moldova faces national elections. And on the other hand, the second challenge comes from the EU itself, which is being blocked by Hungary in taking further steps. And while
with regards to Ukraine, obviously, right? Or is Hungary opposing Moldova's accession as well?
No, it isn't. But while there's no formal coupling between Ukraine and Moldova, with Hungary blocking Ukraine on its EU path, it is very difficult for the EU leaders to allow Moldova to move forward without creating the impression that Kiev is being left behind. So at this point, I think this is the main task at hand. This is what we're going to see today. Are the leaders going to find a way to either move both countries forward, or will they somehow decouple them, or will Hungary be able to hold the whole process hostage? Until now, creative solutions have been developed, and I think it's becoming more and more obvious that EU leaders are no longer willing to allow Viktor Orban to single-handedly basically decide the way the Union is going on strategic issues. And former European councils have ended with conclusions published at 26 only. We also know how Viktor Orban was previously sent away for coffee, also in order to so-called abstain. So I think really what we're looking at is, are we going to see more of this? Is it even possible under the EU framework to try and advance, and how far when you actually do formally need unanimity? But I think at this point there's a lot of goodwill from the bloc to try and advance even without Hungary.
So now, before you can actually undertake successful negotiations, which take time, you need a government that supports this. And no doubt Maia Sandu is pro-European, but you've mentioned elections. Do you think there is still a risk that Russia may actually overturn the will of the people, as they tried to do with the referendum? I mean, the referendum was successful, but barely. I mean, if Russia actually had Russia managed to undertake more of these operations, pushing its own agenda, it could have failed. So what is your take on these upcoming elections? Could Russia still come up on top using these illegal and subversive methods that they use?
I think when it comes to the last year, I would look at it differently. I would say, given the magnitude of Russian efforts, I think Moldova has managed to do an almost impossible job very well, and the referendum would have probably been more successful had Russia not interfered. However, things are different this year, because also internally support for the Action and Solidarity Party is not as strong as it was for Maia Sandu and the European agenda last year. So we're dealing with an internal situation which is more mixed. Russia has a hand in this as well, and it's been stoking dissatisfaction. It's been trying to leverage the instability and the difficulties that generated even by its own actions in Ukraine against the current government. The Action and Solidarity Party has itself had limited space for maneuver, with a lot of challenges on their hands to try and at the same time continue to win hearts and minds. Russia has also helped the creation of fake pro-European parties that present themselves as pro-European, but in fact actually carry forward the Russian agenda. So the threat is absolutely there, and with a lot of mixed methods employed, from bringing in Russian citizens under false passports and carrying cash and trying to buy votes, to using bot and troll farms, to using loyalist media and so on. Russia has a lot of tools at its disposal, so it's going to be an uphill battle. And I think international support and the support of the European Union and the actual opening of the first cluster would be a tremendous help to Chișinău, because it would help show that the narratives of Russian disinformation, for instance, that say that the European Union is not going to deliver, that it doesn't want Moldova in, at least at this point, are false. So I think a lot depends on the ability of Moldova to continue to put up this fight, and on the international support that is being given.
And the authorities in Moldova are quite robust in countering these threats. I mean, some of the parties that were pro-Russian, including the initiative of Mr. Ilan Shor, well, they were actually delegalized at some point. Russia is still trying. But there is also another issue. We've just seen it on the map in red, this glaring scar on the map, you could say, at least visually. That is Transnistria. And it also represents, in a way, a scar on the society of Moldova, because healing it will take time. And if you want to enter the European Union, you cannot simply leave Transnistria behind. You need to reintegrate it. Do you think this is a task that the government in Moldova will be able to undertake? And can it do so because Russia still maintains its forces there?
Well, to start with, there's one very positive thing about this, and that is that this is something that Moldova needs to concern itself with only at the end of the accession process. And I think this is something that the European Union should have learned from the Balkans. I hope it has, not to get stuck in opening negotiations and advancing negotiations in issues that can be sorted out down the road. And especially when you create a dynamics and you already have some of the integration, and the current enlargement methodology allows for staged accession. So if the country and the society sees itself integrated gradually into the European Union mechanisms and gets the benefits, then it might actually be easier to solve the Transnistria problem, because of Transnistria being part of the association agreement with the EU, the will, for instance, in Transnistria to join Russia's war in Ukraine and get dragged in any shape or form has been historically low. So, it has already created the kind of dynamics that has seen Tiraspol interact much more with Chișinău. They are much more dependent on Chișinău now. So I think the Moldovan authorities are in a pretty strong negotiating position. They have developed a very ambitious plan for the reintegration of Transnistria, but these things definitely cannot be done all at the same time. And Russia can still leverage Transnistria, they can turn off the gas, they can pressure Moldovan authorities, and just by basically landing a huge social and economic problem on their hands at any point outside of the decision of Chișinău. So this is a ticking bomb. However, if these Russian maneuvers are averted, so the worst is avoided, I think Transnistria stands a pretty good chance to be resolved one way or another, probably through reintegration. But this is really something that's more for the long term, and it's something that will depend a lot on the context. But for now, both kinds of scenarios are there.
It's still a gargantuan task, obviously, but one has to hope that Moldova will be able to prevail, as it did already in many cases in the past. Oana Popescu was our guest today here on TVP World. Please stay with us, of course, here on TVP World, but thank you very much for joining us on this issue.
Thank you.
I'm Oana Popescu. You're watching TVP World. We'll be back in a few minutes.